Michael Jackson's Thriller album.
Stories in the Room.
This is Michael Jackson's Thriller album, Stories in the Room. Join film composer Anthony Marinelli, who programmed synthesizers for 7 songs on Thriller, and A&R veteran film producer Stephen Ray, who assisted Quincy Jones and was in the studio every day with Quincy and Michael.
Michael Jackson's Thriller album, Stories in the Room.
I'm Anthony Marinelli with my longtime close friend and co-host, Stephen Ray, bringing you the real stories directly from the talented people in the room with us during the making of Thriller, the greatest selling album of all time.
And the other thing was all those other factors that were happening in the world and culture and society and with MTV and with just the record industry was in a huge slump and there wasn't anything out there that was exciting people, and all of a sudden you had songs like you had never heard songs before. People asked me about, what I thought about the record. And I said, I was hearing songs that I had never heard songs like before. I had never heard a song like Billie Jean. Yeah. The subject, the attitude. I had never heard a song like Startin' Something. Yeah. Because that's like a whole unique animal. And Beat It had a quality that was a little bit different than Human Nature. And there was a bunch of songs on that record that they were different than what...
Well, then the title song, nothing like Thriller. That's a whole other thing. That's like a movie soundtrack.
Well, exactly it is. And that was exactly what Rod came up with, the explanation of the song when he came into the studio that day. If you remember the story, if you've heard Rod tell the story about how he was, they recorded Starlight, and they recorded a bunch of other songs that Quincy had selected, and then Michael started bringing in songs. And Rod said, I went home and I realized, this isn't going to be Off the Wall 2. This is like a really different direction than Off the Wall. It's a whole different energy. And he said, Starlight's not going to cut it.
That's a disco song.
Well, it was
close to what was Off the Wall.
Yeah, it was. It was lighter. And the songs that Michael was bringing were edgier. In energy-wise. And he said he went to bed. He said in the morning when his eyes popped open and he woke up, he said it came to him. Thriller. He said the word just came to his mind. Thriller. He goes, that's the name of it. And he just riffed on Thriller being the song, and then being the title of the album, and then how to create the song that had all those qualities that Thriller had, which was what Rod was amazing at. I mean, to me, he had a Mozart mind.
He had every part figured out.
In terms of arrangement. But vibe and feel too.
Yes.
Because number one, if it would have been done by someone else in a different era, it would have been a novelty song. But it had this attitude, and with Michael's delivery, Michael's interpretation of those lyrics and the way Rod wrote it, and then the idea about having Vincent Price come in and do a rap. I mean, they were totally...
But that came later. Well, that was like an evolution.
It did, but everything was. You see, that's the thing about the whole project. The whole project was this evolutionary thing. And Rod's song evolving from Starlight to what it became, and all the elements. And I remember Rod having the conversation with Quincy. He goes, we kind of make it like it's tongue-in-cheek, but we give it the edge. And we play off, because if you're old enough to have watched television, when the Saturday afternoon B movies were typically old horror flicks that sometimes were campy and sometimes they were downright scary. But he said, we play off that theme and we make it kind of like it's got, and Michael can give it the edge. And it's like he orchestrated what it could become.
The way Brian and I got the call was through Tom Baylor to work on Thriller, the song, because we were just doing films. We were doing film scores. So they were thinking like, cinematically about the song. And I guess, I don't know if they were like projecting what was going to happen with MTV. I mean, they must have known, or if it was going to actually go. But whether or not they did, they were thinking visually on a song. And the fact that we were doing films, I don't know how that exactly translates, but they were looking for every single edge to cast, because Quincy looked at his role sometimes like a film director. Mm-hmm. He did that in Color Purple. He would cast composers, and he was casting, right, musicians. Yes. I'm sure you heard it all the time. Oh, yes. So we just got cast as like the film guys to come in and just take what was Starlight and turn it into Thriller, like you said. So it's great to kind of hear that background situation. And then we had to build it up like super fast. But Rob, and we talked with Greg Fillinganes about this. We just followed what Rod had in, like you said, Michael knew every background vocal and every nuance and ad lib and all that. Yeah. Rod knew every single.
He knew every rhythmic beat. Yeah. He knew every note. He knew every single everything.
And you spoke to something that people don't realize is that, you have that many songs that are on the record. But Rod, when he would come over from London, he had multiple ideas of songs. So he knew every bit of the arrangement and the vibe and all of that. And he knew how to, more importantly, he knew how to translate his thoughts and emotions to Quincy and Michael. He knew how, and Michael was so highly creative, both of them, of course, to accept that, back to what we were saying about the ability to listen and to embrace without ego, and then to reinterpret what the original creator had visioned, and Rod had a vision when he came over with multiple songs, most of which the world has never heard, because those were picked for Thriller.
And he weeded a lot of songs out too. That's an art, is knowing what not to do.
Right. In the way that you spoke about Quincy acting like a director would in film.
Yes.
Rod, his mind was like an editor. Yes. And he could figure those things out from that, which is why Quincy and Rod together, they were. Yeah.
Some of my, I don't talk about it too much because I get emotional. But man, I got to tell you, just sitting there with them and just being a witness to just watching them sit at the hotel at the Westwood Marquis, or, in the studio, or he'd come to Quincy's house and Quincy's studio at the house. And it was just, it was like, is this really happening? Am I really here?
Yeah, no, it was, Rod was a genius at what he did. And it was, the two of them would start interacting, and it would just be, you would just see each one firing off the other one, and they'd throw it back and forth, and they'd be interrupting, and then at the end of it, they'd say, okay, well, let's put it on tape. Because of course it wasn't a hard drive yet, so it had to go to magnetic tape. And then the result would just be like, whew.
Yeah. Rob would have his little dictaphone and he would just sing melodies into it, it's really special, really, really special. It was such a blessing and an honor to be there with you and them and in that setting, yes. And then to see how those moments affected the world. And still are. Yeah. You can't think about Halloween, even just with the one song, you can't think about Halloween without Thriller. For as long as this planet was spinning, the evolution of Halloween is Thriller. Yeah. And from here on, as long as this planet is spinning, that's what it will be.
Join us for the next episode of Michael Jackson's Thriller album, Stories in the Room, with your hosts Anthony Marinelli and Stephen Ray. Watch our extended interviews on youtube.com/@StoriesInTheRoom. Audio-only interviews are available on all podcast networks. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok @StoriesInTheRoom. For the latest news and links, visit the website, StoriesInTheRoom.com. This podcast is produced by Christian D. Bruun and David Wolf, recorded by Audivita Studios. Additional recording by Ben Rackless. Edited by Jay Spang and Sean Hedinger. Music by Anthony Marinelli and Stephen Ray.
Michael Jackson's Thriller album.
Stories in the